All right, we're live with the latest episode of Cloudy with a Chance of Learning. How's it going, Megan?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you just fine. You know, I have my speaker a little loud in here. I'm going to turn it down, but we are ready for a fun lesson today. Megan, I know you've been working hard on some of the graphics for this. Go ahead and tell everyone what we're about to talk about here.
Yes, so this is a topic that typically it occurs during the warmer months. So let's start with May, mainly through the summer months, and it's actually about pyrocumulus clouds. You know, when I used to work in Central Texas, I also saw some pyrocumulus clouds in person. It was a very interesting topic. What about you, Andrew? Have you ever seen any?
Yeah, I've seen pyrocumulus clouds before, and I keep messing with this mic off camera, Megan. Let me turn it down just a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, I used to see them back in Arkansas. My first job was actually in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and farmers would burn their fields after they've already harvested, and sometimes we'd have pyrocumulus clouds from that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so we're going to dive into the science behind pyrocumulus clouds. I'll go ahead and let you advance the graphic here, Andrew. Yeah, so of course it always starts with a fire, right? And we talk about pyrocumulus clouds, and they're different than ordinary cumulus clouds, and we'll talk more about that. But pyro actually means fire.
Yeah, so pyro means fire, and then of course we have the clouds that form itself. Clouds formed by the rising air from intense heating caused by these wildfires. And there's usually enough moisture, especially if the fire is in a forested area where we could have vegetation that has a lot of moisture in it, that can lead to atmospheric instability, and then we can have some cooling and condensing as the moisture rises, leading to clouds to form.
Exactly. And, you know, this is not only caused by wildfires, but also volcanic activity too. We see it here in Texas, mostly over the Panhandle in West Texas, typically from late spring through the summer months. So really beginning around May, I would say, when our temperatures begin to rise. You really have to watch for drought and also the dry weather too. Those two things take into account, you know, sometimes our meteorologists, we talk about burn bans in place. You really have to focus on where those burn bans are, because this is, you know, burn bans typically mean outdoor burning is not recommended. So any sort of flame could really spark up fast. And this is something we have to watch for as meteorologists, right, Andrew?
That's right. And you know, we actually, one of the times you and I actually saw pyrocumulus clouds together was from a wildfire at a time where there were a lot of burn bans in place because of drought.
Right, that was in Coryell County. So if you are going northbound on I-35 toward Dallas, Fort Worth, Coryell County is west of I-35, so closer to, maybe you've heard of Gatesville, Texas. That's where we've seen those pyrocumulus clouds. And crazy, Andrew, that was back in 2018, July of
Yeah, that was a
2018.
while back.
So I've also included that picture.
Yeah, that was a while back, and something wild to see. So, yeah, you have to watch for drought and burn bans, as meteorologist Meagan Massey said. Pyrocumulus versus normal cumulus. So, what's kind of the difference there, Megan?
Go ahead and advance it. So pyrocumulus, it forms rapidly due to the intense heating. Andrew, you were just talking about, you know, the intense heating. Of course, you have to have the moisture, not only that, but the atmospheric instability in place. And, you know, as that fire is burning, you have air rising rapidly. And that's the biggest difference, I would say, from pyrocumulus clouds versus normal cumulus clouds. And typically when we talk about cumulus clouds, think of those white puffy clouds you see in the sky.
Yeah, they're typically they're outside today.
Mm-hmm.
Even talking about that, yeah, we have some cumulus clouds outside today, and these aren't pyrocumulus; they're just regular cumulus clouds. And you know, Megan, before we go much further, I want to say hello to a few people watching. Hello to Billy. Hello to Karen. Want to say hello to our friend Matthew, one of our loyal viewers. And Matthew recently got one of his own pages to be able to comment on with. So
Oh,
welcome again,
nice.
Matthew. Addison from Converse says hi. Hello, Addison. You're another one of our loyal viewers for Cloudy with a Chance of Learning. I hope you're having a wonderful start to your week.
And we also have Diana saying good afternoon. So good afternoon to everyone. I'm glad that you're joining us this Monday. Andrew, you know I have the official name on that slide, but honestly, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I think I would butcher it.
Yeah, so flammagenitus.
Okay, I'm taking your word for it.
Yeah, so that's the official name as the process that leads to these pyrocumulus clouds forming. But we know it better as just fires that lead to cumulus clouds forming. You could say it just like that too.
Right. So, you know, typically we see pyrocumulus clouds, if any, in Texas, late spring and through the summer months. So that's really going to be, I would say, all the way through August, especially, you know, typically the hottest and driest times of the year. But we're actually diving into the science behind pyrocumulus clouds. So I've labeled it here. You can see the red arrows. What that's showing is the rising air, the intense heating from the fire, that wildfire in place. So the fire can give off hot and moist air. Now remember that we have to have that instability in place, that atmospheric instability. So typically with that rising air, you could get water vapor, smoke, and ash that can get carried up. We're talking thousands of feet into our atmosphere. And the water vapor will then condense on the ash and help form these pyrocumulus clouds. And you know how normal cumulus clouds, they appear more white, right? And also grayish colors. Well, when you're looking at pyrocumulus clouds, it's more brown, grays, and blacks because of the ash and smoke going into our atmosphere.
So there's a lot more than just moisture in these clouds then, I guess we're saying.
Right. Right, and we talked about lightning too. A lot of our classroom talks, again, are kind of puzzle pieces with one another. We've talked about lightning, what it is. Remember, you have those positive and negative charges within those cumulonimbus and also those pyrocumulus clouds. So you could also get lightning strikes. So that's when thunderstorms also begin to form.
Yeah, so some of those charges are through all the separating with all the friction and stuff going on in the clouds, all the extra material like the dust, sometimes ash, sometimes just little pieces of molecules bouncing together a lot can lead to some lightning within these storms.
Right, and pyrocumulus itself has multiple hazards. So overall, we really don't like pyrocumulus because of, let's say, if it's caused by wildfires, you could get lightning. And when lightning strikes, let's say, a tree where there's a burn ban in place, that lightning from the thunderstorm could spark a new wildfire. Sometimes really strong updrafts can form really strong downdrafts. So that cool air can also help spread the fire even more. You know, and that's something we definitely don't want to see.
Yeah, strong wind. Wind is another big thing that can lead to wildfire spreading. There was a wildfire off in Arizona recently in an area where they've had a little bit of drought. And one of the big issues behind the wildfire spreading near Tucson, Arizona, was the strong wind that they had pushing the fire further on. And this was a big issue in Gatlinburg. I think it was about 5 years ago where they had the big wildfire, and unfortunately the fire made its way down the mountain from an area called the Chimneys, which is in East Tennessee in the Smoky Mountains, and it made its way through an area called Gatlinburg, and the wind really pushed the fire quickly.
Yeah, and Andrew, another common spot where you typically see this would be Australia.
Yeah. That, and then California too. California has had that as a big issue.
Exactly. So
and
I know
Australia
the wildfires
had it earlier. Was it earlier this year or at the end of last year when that happened?
Was it the end of last year? I think so, when the fires were a huge topic, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah, those were big wildfires.
Time is flying by, so I think it was last year though. So this is actually a pyrocumulus cloud that I have seen in person. This is, again, over Coryell County. If you're just now joining us, Coryell County, if you're headed northbound on I-35 toward Dallas-Fort Worth, Coryell County is actually on the west side of I-35. So we were in Belton. That's in Bell County, closer to the Temple area. And this is several miles away. And it's
Yeah,
just
this is
crazy
Lake
you
Belton
can see
itself.
that. Yeah, you can see that perspective of how tall the pyrocumulus clouds are. And of
And you
course,
can
that
see
was
where it goes
from,
from being, oh, I'm sorry, Megan.
no, you're fine. There's a little bit of a delay on my end, so go ahead. You got it.
Okay. You can see the smoke from the wildfire. You've labeled that on the screen where it's kind of more fuzzy. And then look at those firm cotton ball type tops. That is where you go from being just smoke to then a cumulus cloud forming from that hot air rising rapidly.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Notice they're more grayish in color too,
Yeah.
from the ash and the smoke.
But I mean, you got to have a really hot fire to have that air rise like that. You can only imagine how hot that fire would be to cause the air to rise that quickly and then form those clouds.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was humid that day. This was again in July of 2018. So typically you have the heat, you have the humidity, and since, the rising air from that wildfire, that was kind of the boundary, the nudge that it needed, we had that instability in place. So I think, factoring in the heat, not only the intense heat from the wildfire, but also the surrounding environment, along with that, the humidity, that kind of helped fuel this. And I think atmospheric conditions were just right to support some pyrocumulus development. So it's just always so interesting to see that. Not only can you see it visually, but you can also see it on satellite. Andrew, if you want to advance the slide here, I believe satellite's up next. And like we've
Yeah.
talked about, this is thanks to the National Weather Service. They've posted this. You can see in Washington, there was a huge fire. All the green arrows that you see on this picture, that's actually showing the smoke from that fire. So
Wow.
all the way over Montana, right? And Idaho and parts of North Dakota. So that smoke, thanks to that wind shear. And remember, we've talked about wind shear, the differences between with wind and height of the atmosphere, just kind of blew that smoke across several states and also showing pyrocumulus clouds too.
Yeah, I mean, that's wild stuff. I mean, you said that we can not only see it on satellite, but sometimes because of the particles, we can see this on radar too.
Yes, and so recently, I think it was last May. So last year in May, near Amarillo, they had a severe thunderstorm. It was actually produced, and a wildfire helped develop a severe thunderstorm. Pretty rare, but sometimes the intense heating and the instability is there, and you can sometimes get thunderstorms that develop very rapidly and also turn severe with multiple cloud-to-ground lightning strikes. This, of course, not being in Texas, this is just kind of an example showing you the pyrocumulus and the thunderstorm activity that can be seen on radar too.
Yeah, so radar and satellite can be used to actually see a lot more than just thunderstorms too at times. And we've talked about this in the past. Sometimes you can even see smoke from a wildfire. Sometimes that leads to thunderstorms forming, of course, the smoke itself. But sometimes you can even just see the smoke. And you can see that on satellite. You can see it all sorts of different ways. And we've used satellite to see wildfires here at KENS 5. We've also used radar, and we've even seen bats take off from the caves at night, changing the topic just a little bit. But at sunset every night, you can even see bats take off from local caves.
Exactly. So satellite and radar, two very helpful tools and resources that we use as meteorologists, not only to see thunderstorms, but bats and birds, like you were saying, Andrew. We like to see, cold fronts that way with insects. And there's just so many things you can see on radar. I just think, seeing pyrocumulus clouds, that's very interesting, along with the timing too, when it kind of laps through the timing. Just seeing the cloud tops really grow on satellite too.
Yeah, and I'm going to bump this graphic back just a little bit, guys. because I want to talk a little bit about ways that we see pyrocumulus clouds here in South Texas. Now, we talked about wildfires, but you know, Megan, we have a huge farming community here in South Texas. And when it comes time for the farmers to kind of burn their fields after the harvest is already done from the previous season and to kind of prep the field for the next season, we can sometimes have pyrocumulus clouds form because they'll burn a large section of land, and that'll lead to sometimes pyrocumulus clouds. And another way, now this isn't so much in South Texas, but it happens back, we've talked about space a lot. Stennis Space Center, which is on the Louisiana and Mississippi state line, closer towards New Orleans, that's the spot where they test rockets before they put them on space shuttles and send them into space. So they'll test the rockets there, and they'll send a bunch of fuel through the system and run it just like it's going all the way up to space, but it's strapped into this big cement frame that allows the rocket not to move anywhere. And that will lead, all that intense heat coming out of the engine will lead to clouds to form, and you'll get pyrocumulus from the rockets.
Well, there you go. That's an interesting fact too. I never thought about that, nor have I seen pictures either.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. You know, you can get pyrocumulus clouds in all sorts of different ways. And whenever these clouds are forming, you'll get a lot of moisture. If the air is really humid, like let's say you're near the coast, like down towards Stennis Space Center, a lot of moisture will follow that heat up with the clouds that are forming. So you got to think about it like this. You have a lot of air rising rapidly. Well, that will pull up the moisture with it. It cools, condenses. And then if that cloud gets tall enough and that moisture condenses enough, you're going to start to get some raindrops to form. And sometimes you could have a little bit of shower activity.
And you know, speaking of the rain, Andrew, sometimes when the pyrocumulus clouds form and the rain begins to fall, it can help extinguish that fire too.
True. So sometimes the rain associated with these can be great, as long as you don't have lightning, because then lightning could lead to more fires.
Yeah.
If the ground is really dry. But yeah, I mean, it usually takes a larger fire, by the way. So if you're going to see pyrocumulus clouds, it's typically a larger fire. That one that we saw in Coryell County, that was a huge fire.
That was a huge fire that had been going on for days. They were trying to contain that one. But, you know, a simple campfire, you're not going to get a pyrocumulus cloud.
It would have to be a really impressive campfire.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely.
I'm sorry, Megan, I didn't mean to talk over you. What were you about to say there?
Oh, I think I was done. I had wrapped it up.
Okay. Well, yeah. Again, it would take a really large fire, or it would take I talked about farmers burning their crops. It would take a really large amount of land for a pyrocumulus cloud to form. When I worked in Arkansas, it was in the Delta, and so you would have huge spans of land which would be being burned at once. That's the only reason why you would sometimes have pyrocumulus clouds form from that. I would say that one of the more common ways we see pyrocumulus clouds here in South Texas would be from those wildfires.
I think so too. That's why I put the date being, you know, we typically see them late spring through summer in Texas. So once we start having, you know, less rainfall, we start getting in those drier months like June, July through August. You can typically start to get those burn bans, and you know, when outdoor burning is not recommended. So sometimes when the ground is so dry, those wildfires can become very large if they spread rapidly, and then you get the pyrocumulus clouds.
Yeah. So yeah, guys, I mean, this is actually another thing that is really important to know about, because sometimes if there's a fire nearby, you'll be able to, you know, understand that a fire is nearby from the smoke being near you. You know, it's always, wildfires are one of those really dangerous things that you always want to keep a close eye out for just to stay safe. So, you know, always be on the lookout for wildfires. Know where you need to go to get away from one. Know different routes to get out. This is really more for your parents, I guess I would say, instead of just the kids that we typically talk to. But, you know, always stay away from fires. Wildfires can spread quickly, and only you can prevent forest fires, like what Smokey Bear, the bear, says. You know, always be careful and whenever wildfires could be around. And Megan, I want to talk a little bit too about cloudy with a chance of learning, our schedule. Oh, I double-clicked with my mouse. So today we talked about pyrocumulus clouds. Tomorrow, ocean currents, how that may impact our weather too. You know, ocean currents are always happening. We're going to talk a little bit about that on Wednesday. It's how clouds make rain. Really fascinating subject there. You know, we've talked about how moisture cools and condenses and can lead to rainfall. We're going to talk more about that on Wednesday. Thursday is going to be the summer weather outlook, what we're expecting. You know, Megan, Saturday is the first day of summer.
Yeah, it is. We have the summer solstice, so we could potentially talk about that the following week. We'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. First official day of summer. Of course, meteorological summer started a few weeks ago, right?
It did. So meteorological summer, of course, it's always based on the temperature trends, right? And then you have the official start to summer, which is astronomical. So that's typically when we start to see, you know, the changes in our seasons officially. So of course we should see the change, I would say, before 5 p.m. this Saturday. That's going to be when we have the summer solstice. So on June 20th.
Yeah. And then Fun Time Friday is on Friday, guys. So make sure you send us your drawings. Make sure you send us your pictures. We want to show them on Friday. A lot of fun. And we typically talk about other things going on in the weather world, too, for Fun Time Fridays. So be sure to tune in because that's always fun. And we get to answer a few more of your questions. By the way, we haven't had many questions today, Megan. I would love to see a few more. Guys, if you have any, send them our way. We would love to answer them. Before we go much, before we let everyone go today, I do want to show this. Megan, you know, we've got some rain out there today.
Yeah, we do have some rain today. So, you know, last night and also during our newscast Sunday afternoon, I talked about, hey, we could get some brief pockets of heavy rain, and that's exactly what we're looking at on radar right now. Yeah,
so these aren't going to be from pyrocumulus clouds, but this is just plain old shower activity. Much needed because we still have some drought for some areas, Victoria especially, but Victoria's going to see some improvement. Not, I don't think, by this next drought monitor, but hopefully over the next 2 we'll see some improvement. And Eagle Pass could use some rain, but they're not really seeing too much right now. So don't be surprised if you do see a shower today. The good news is if you didn't want much rain today, it will be brief. Just a brief shower or 2 is possible. All these moving from the southeast to the northwest. The closer to the coast you are, the better your chance for rain for today. So guys, again, cloudy with a chance of learning continues, not just for this week, but all the way through July. We're going to keep the learning going right here at Ken's 5. Be sure to continue to tune in. Megan, thank you so much for those graphics about pyrocumulus clouds. I mean, that was a really interesting topic.
Hey, you're welcome. I'm glad. I love this topic. So I've talked about it before, and I just think it's very interesting. Who knows, you know, maybe you've seen pyrocumulus before. And if you have, you know, send us your pictures and we'll make sure to show them on Friday.
Yeah, we'll share them for Fun Time Friday. Any photos you may have of pyrocumulus clouds, or even just of the regular rain this week. We'd love to share your photos. There's some sunsets, some sunrises. A lot of us are spending more time outdoors these days, just with the current situation, with everything going on in the world. So send us your photos, how you're enjoying this summer. Would love to share them, and also send us photos of everything that you're learning right there at home. So guys, we're going to go ahead and sign off of here. We hope that you have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Don't forget ocean currents. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. we're going to talk all about them and how not just they're always happening in the ocean currents, but also how they sometimes even impact our weather. So signing off here, Megan, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I hope you all have a great Monday.
Yeah, have a great one, guys.